Hello everybody and welcome back to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast. As the Reds fall to defeat at Craven Cottage, we will discuss the performance, 5 at the back and whether Forest should change it, and maybe if Forest were a little bit too predictable from the off, and of course look ahead to another busy few weeks for Forest as the games come thick and fast in the bid to, I was about to say survive in the top 4, not survive, we're not near that bottom end of the table this time. Joined first of all by Dave Astbury, who was at Craven Cottage on Saturday and was at Exeter Stadium last week. Walked through the door, Dave, you were just saying before we came on, at 5-6 in the morning. So some real commitment, mate, just like many of the other Forest fans in the past few weeks. How do you sum up the past few weeks, Dave? How do you sum up Exeter? And how do you sum up the trip to London as well?
A little bit more up and down than had been the case previously, Max, but the Bournemouth game aside, I don't think we've been truly awful. Brilliant, obviously, against Brighton. That was a historic effort. Exeter, it was just a matter of, unlike Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Everton and several others, of actually being in the 5th round rather than being out, and with a good opportunity for a quarter-final spot, by taking on Ipswich. And then Saturday, a decent game between two good sides. I don't think Forest were truly awful, but Fulham were that bit better, especially in midfield. And I thought it was a fair result.
Absolutely. I agree. I thought that the better team won on the day. And I think that, I think when Forest are doing so well this season, people forget that, these players are humans and they're allowed an off day, and that we had many off days last season. And when you think about the dreadful results we were talking about last season and even the season before in the Premier League, and that was where Forest weren't showing much. But the fact that we're still in the top 4 in the Premier League and having this unbelievable season, a defeat to Fulham certainly isn't the end of the world as some people were making out on Saturday evening, for sure. Joined also by, of course, the main man, Aussie Dave, live from Australia, mate, with the wonderful time difference. So thanks for staying up for us. I appreciate it's late. Looking good in the Aussie Forest t-shirt as well. How are you, mate? And also, as Dave said there, you think that the better team won on the day, really?
Well, certainly the better team won. We didn't look that in it, but I just want to firstly go back to Dave's comment about whinging about getting home for a 5 a.m. post-match. I go to sleep after every Nottingham Forest match at 5 a.m., Dave Astbury. So, I'm not really. I quite enjoyed the Exeter match and it finishing at 10:30 a.m. and going straight to work. So certainly the extension of time wasn't pleasant, that's for sure.
We were stood in that away end, actually, Dave, and we looked at. The best bits were like 24 minutes held up on the board for injury time because of poor old Taiwo's nose, and then the extra time. The penalties were absolutely fantastic. The 4 who took penalties looked like they'd practiced for weeks on end. It was brilliant. But then we looked at the watch, and it was like 25 past 11. And to me, it was like a big adventure. It was great. We stopped at Centrum Services on the M5 coming back. And I remember saying to the coach driver, can we just not go home? Can we just drive to, can we go to the City Ground via Inverness or something like that? It was brilliant, mate. If you'd have been with us, Dave,
you're right. The quality of the Forest players in the penalty shootout definitely shone through. But I think back to your point, Max, it's not panic stations. Now, let's just draw the analogy. During this podcast, you're going to ask maybe 38, 35 questions during the podcast. And some of those questions are going to go really well. And they're going to be perfect and thought out and strategic, and they're going to make sense. But a couple of them, you're going to lose control of David Boldeman and Dave Astbury, and things aren't going to go to a plan. That doesn't mean that you're going to have a bad podcast, Max. It just means that 1 or 2 of the questions along the way were a little bit of hiccups. And when you go back and look at the podcast again, and you look at the questions, you can think, I could have done that better. And so I'm going to draw the analogy for you, Max Hayes, that Nuno is like you in a podcast. And he's having a great season of podcasting. He's just having he just had a question on the weekend that he got the question wrong, didn't he? And he didn't work out. He thought he had one good question, and then the leading question, he thought he could ask a similar question. It just wasn't right. So I don't think it's panic stations yet. I hope you're smiling at me. Did you like that?
Yeah, I am smiling. No, I am smiling. That was a brilliant. And I was going to say, Dave, we have some brilliant analogies on this podcast from everyone that comes on, and that has to top it recently.
I'd agree with that. We should, all of us. I've been taking my cue since December of last year from Nuno, and he's just so calm. game by game by game.
He
He'll have already.
Calm. The 5-0 loss, he wasn't calm though, was he?
No, he had right at that day. He had reason to be irritated.
Yeah.
That was a desperately poor performance. Certainly second half where there was a bit of a capitulation. But you know what? I looked at that. When you get to 2 or 3-0 down, I've run teams. I've played football most of my life, and there are days where, whether you like it or not, the power of the demoralisation will overtake your psyche and your mental faculties, and there's not a lot you can do without it other than just get out of dodge and move on to the next one. I bet all the talk, they'll have had a look back at the game on Saturday. But Nuno being Nuno, it'll be all about Newcastle and the mountain that we have to climb next. I think it's going to be very difficult. So I just look at Nuno and that calm, not being phased. He's not getting ahead of himself. He's not talking about Champions League. He's not talking about conference, Europa League or any of this. He's just all he'll say in his press conference on Thursday or Friday when he deflects the usually banal questions of journalists looking to get some kind of controversial statement out of him is Newcastle is all, and all is Newcastle. So now I just think there are levels of hysteria that people generate around victories and defeats and whatever with Nottingham Forest that are just wholly out of proportion to what's actually going on the field.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Dave. Some good points. Talking of a mountain to climb next week, mountain to climb up those away and stairs. You didn't have to do that at Exeter away, did you? I went on a hike yesterday. No. It was good preparation for next week's trip up north, wasn't it? Climbing this big, it was just kind of like stairwell with a couple of people I went with yesterday, and we were laughing. I was like, yeah, it's going to be good practice for Newcastle. The elevation gain on Strava will be higher climbing those stairs up to Newcastle next week. Be a good workout, Dave. You'll have to help everyone, mate, with your PTing skills. You'll have to keep encouraging everyone. Let's talk about the game then, shall we? And the way that kind of Forest set up, of course, 5 at the back, which is a big talking point, which we're going to get onto and we'll discuss. Matt Sells in goal as usual, and then that back 5 of Murillo, Milenkovic, Morato, Olorena, and Nico Williams. And then, of course, Elliot Anderson, Danilo, Morgan Gibbs-White, Anthony Elanga just behind Chris Wood in that kind of narrow formation as well. Wood leading the line, gets another brilliant goal well taken, which we'll discuss. But Aussie Dave, what did you make of Forest starting with that formation? It almost seemed to me that Nuno tried to almost prevent what happened at Bournemouth, and he set up that way because he was a little bit nervy. It was the first away game after that, and he was maybe worried, so he thought, let's go, rather than being quite open and attacking like we started against Bournemouth, that was the plan. He thought, let's go a little bit more defensive, and obviously maybe 5 at the back wasn't the way to go, and possibly left it a little bit too late to change. Do you agree?
Yeah, they just didn't seem like they got out of first gear at the start, did they? And the Elanga roving, which wing is he on? Him flipping with Chris Wood. We're a little bit confused. I think if you were to take a winner out of it, the Callum Hudson-Odoi suddenly looks like we just can't seem to find a formation without him in the team. And so I'm damned if I'm sure what to do. It made sense. Like, it's not like I'm in a few Forest group chats, and we can sit on a podcast and say, oh, I should have done this. The Forest group chats I'm in weren't screaming blue murder about the formation prior to the match, thinking that was a mistake, were they? Like,
no, nobody moaned about the selection day.
Yeah, Dave, you and I are in one of the same ones. No one was moaning about that setup at the start.
Hindsight is a vicious beast.
Yeah, the one question area I think at the moment is who plays with Gibbs, White, and Anderson in the midfield, and that just seems to be the burning question. And I don't know. None of them have hit the lights out at any stage over the last 18 months, whereas so many other players, you've got the vein of form of Chris Wood or the Hudson-Odoi or the Gibbs-White, and we've had these, none of those guys have hit it out. So I'm just not sure we've worked it out yet, but we work it out some of the time. It's like a question.
It's a very as well. I was just about to pick up on that. It is a good point, and of course Danilo came in and whether Danilo was really ready, and I obviously mean that in the nicest way, great to see him get 60, 70 minutes, however many he did before he came off, but you just wonder whether he was ready and whether Nuno, you're right, Dave, is still... exactly, and that's where in that formation, if Forest set up that way, who do you have as do you go with... It's difficult, isn't it? Because do you go with a more creative player... and obviously when Forest play that narrow formation, I think we lack creativity because you haven't got the likes of Callum Hudson-Odoi, on the other wing. I thought Anthony Elanga had a decent game. I thought he could have been a bit better at times, but I thought he did well. Probably maybe one of the few standouts. I mean, Dave, what do you think in terms of that? In terms of who you play with Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs-White, if Forest are to kind of play this 5 at the back formation, if you like.
I think it's the one problematic area of the team at the moment. It's like a revolving cast of characters, whether it's Ryan, whether it's Nico, whether it's Danny, whether it's Ibra, who's now back. One of them has to kind of put their hand up and stake a claim to it. All the other positions, people have staked claims for. The proof of that is in the fact that our players per person in our squad have played more minutes than any other team in the Premier League. We've used fewer players than anybody. I love that. A settled side where Nuno knows his best 11, or pretty much his best 11 every week. I think, there are other teams like flailing around every week, playing different formations, different 11s, getting nowhere. We're third. We're third for a reason. We're not 17th anymore, checking what Sheffield United, Burnley and Luton Town are doing every week, are we? That's my backstop at the moment. I just feel, the thing is, like Dave says, absolutely spot on. When the 11 was announced, before the game at Craven Cottage, nobody quibbled. Nobody could quibble. That 11 had just destroyed that 11 had just destroyed a very good team in Brighton and Hove Albion, who then thumped Chelsea twice on the team in fifth, twice on the bounce. So Nuno had every right to pick that 11. Everybody looked at the starting line and went, "Yeah, that's fine. That's fair enough." And quibbling against Danilo, not ready on Saturday. He was ready against Brighton. He played really well against Brighton. Everybody against Brighton was brilliant. 7-0 proved it. My view is that, everybody's going, if I was managing that team and we just won 7-0, I'm saying to those lads who've got the shirt, you've earned it, you keep the shirts, we go again. So it's all right to say, the 5 at the back didn't work. It was fine against Brighton. You know what I mean? It's just life. You try one thing one week and it works 100% of the time. You try with the exact same intensity the next week and it doesn't work. It's just life. It's the natural rhythm of life and being a human being. I just felt at Bournemouth, I thought the problem at Bournemouth, because these are all of a piece, these games, these last three league games, at Bournemouth, Callum's absence was missed and the team got bent out of shape to try and cover the gap where Callum was.
Check our win record without Callum.
Yeah.
It's horrendous. And we don't seem to have a strategy for when we don't have him either.
No, the strategy for him not being in against Brighton was to go bring the other of the bailiffs in, bring Morato in, and it looked brilliant. Brighton couldn't deal with it.
That's the only one I remember us winning without Callum.
Yeah, so I don't think. This is why I can't be too down on Nuno for his decision, on the lads. They weren't dire on Saturday. They weren't awful. They created some chances. They did look a lot sharper when Callum came on and gave us that balance. So that's the hindsight of that, saying, well, maybe we should have gone 4 at the back to start with. I just think on Saturday, Lukic, Sander Berger especially, and Smith Rowe breaking, just played better than our lads did. Our lads were all sort of 4s and 5s at the weekend, whereas Fulham was 7s and 8s really. And then the big problem on Saturday was, and I mean big, was Adama Traore had one of his best games. He's an inconsistent player, good some weeks, awful others, and he was on a going day, and he gave Nico a lot of trouble. And that's what kind of bent Brighton in that 7-0 defeat. You would have thought Mitoma was the one to bend Forest out of shape that day, or Yaku Minte. Neither of them did that. Adama Traore was far more successful in changing the shape of Forest than either of those guys were. You know what I mean? So I just think you've got to give the credit to Fulham. I know we're all like so in love with Forest, we can't give credit to another team, but Fulham were excellent. They were just better than us on the day.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. No, I agree. I thought Adama Traore just ran the show. I just think that's what he can do. Absolutely. I mean, the sheer just size of him and just the pace on him is unbelievable. And Nico Williams has been brilliant for Forest recently, and I think it says a lot when he's struggled against him compared to, I can't give players off the top of my head, but out of the almost the so-called top 6 when he's not struggled against players in terms of Liverpool, at Liverpool and City before.
He put Mo Salah in his pocket that Tuesday night at the City Ground.
Yep.
He was brilliant against Mo Salah. It's just Adama Traore is a different beast. He's like a running predator. You know the guy from the films? He's like that. I mean, most of the time, the Fulham fans probably have pull their hair out at Adama Traore a lot of the time. Saturday, he was on it, and he was really, really good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Few comments, because we are live on Facebook and YouTube. Kieran says Nuno should have changed formation second half as we were getting skinned down the signs, left it too late. Pat says this one, you can't argue with the team selection, but against the top teams, our midfield consistently gets overrun. That is an interesting point, isn't it? David, Aussie Dave, is that I might start calling you Dave too. Is that Forest do seem to struggle a little bit in terms of the midfield with the top six, and we've talked about it before when even Ryan Yates has maybe struggled, but maybe that's a good point that Forest sometimes just seem to get overrun in these, in the games where we're away from home and where we're almost having to chase the game a little bit like we were when, of course, we were 1-0 and 2-1 down.
Well, there's a few multiple set of factors here, as when you're playing against the top teams and you're away from home, you're naturally under more pressure anyway. And then when you've got probably your weakest position, which is the number 6, and you've got two creative players in Anderson and Gibbs-White who do like to get forward, it's going to create some problems for us. And so it's just a consistent problem again. And I don't know why they didn't strengthen that position in the transfer window, to be honest. Or maybe they're just hoping Sangare could come good or Danilo will come good, and that's why they were playing them now. But the problem is, how can you split them? Like, you could ask 100 Forest fans to rate Dominguez, Yates, Thangare, and Danilo, and you get 25 different answers for all 4 of them. And in terms of, you'll have some that, Yates should be in the team, and you get the cranky ones like me that say Yates ain't good. No, it's just too difficult. Whereas that's just the position we need to strengthen. So, yeah, I'm not sure we have the solution there. I'd be persisting with Sangare. I think he's got at least the physical fortitude to take these characters on. But also, and then there's the third factor, is that all of the teams now are turning up to play us. It's not like we're getting free hits against every team now. How many tactic videos are there on Nottingham Forest? There's like so many now on YouTube. And so everyone knows how we play. They're turning up wanting to give us a go and giving us a strategy. So that also creates its own problem. It's just not an easy solve, Max. If it was easy to solve, Nuno would have done it already.
Yeah, no, of course he would. Dave, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because, I mentioned it at the start of the podcast, actually, in the introduction. Do Forest become a little bit too predictable at times? And I'm not just saying Forest do it, more teams do it down the divisions and across the world of football. And it is difficult when Forest have almost had this trademark, really, of the way we've been playing. And teams will have looked at Forest and gone, oh, can we replicate that? Or how do we beat that? And obviously teams have beaten it so far. You look at Bournemouth, you look at Fulham, you look at even City when we went away from home. They're just a few to mention so far this season. Is it difficult for Forest not to be predictable? Do you kind of get what I'm saying? Because it is a difficult thing. We want to kind of keep that way we're playing. But Fulham knew that Forest wanted them to have a lot of the ball and us to kind of soak it up and then go on the counter-attack. And it is difficult to not be predictable in football, isn't it, really?
Yeah, when you've got such a strong identity as we have.
Yeah.
We've craved identity for years. And now
we've got it.
One. And now people are sort of saying, we've made everybody in this division, I'm going to give Forest a load of credit now. We've gone in an unorthodox route, different to the other 19. And we've actually flown against the perceived wisdom in the game at the moment, which is possession, possession, possession. We've gone the other way. We're like a punk band going in a different direction to the prog rock of the 70s. Do you know what I'm saying? What Forest have done, Forest have got a strong identity. For so long, those years in the Championship, Forest need an identity. They've got one now. So understandably, people are going to look at that identity and say, this is what Nuno wants. This is the philosophy of Nottingham Forest. We need to do something to combat it. And we have forced really good clubs, some massive clubs, to really look closely at what Nottingham Forest are doing. Nottingham Forest are bottom of the possession table, quite happily bottom of it. Yeah, I've heard people in the trend turn this year. The night Liverpool came in that fantastic 1-1 draw, which was a great game of football. Let them have it. If Liverpool want it, let them have it. It's the ultimate middle digit to a massive club like that. Go on, then you have it. Exeter kind of did it to us on Tuesday night. You're the Premier League, dude. You have it. So we've got this identity. You can't have it both ways. If you're going to have an identity, you're thereby going to be predictable. If you haven't got an identity and you don't know what you're doing, then the opposition aren't going to know what you're doing. The trick now for Nuno is to try and preempt this idea of predictability and say starting with Newcastle and then going on to Arsenal and City, okay, so you think this is what we're going to do? We're going to try something a little different. I mean, so I don't think much is going to change. Forest know what they are. They know they've got a system set up which, we've lost 6 out of 25 league games. That to me says that the system is great. The lads enjoy playing it. There's no rebellious noises coming out of that dressing room. There's nobody who's like a spare part, like your Shelbys and your Harry Arters of days gone by. There's nobody like that. Everybody's on board with it. They're all happy with it. They all like playing it. The subs come on, they do a job, people go off. Everybody's on board with it. So that identity is a fantastic thing to have. But like you say, people are going to looking at Forest on the transition, looking at Forest letting other teams have the ball, and looking at Forest wanting to counter quickly, and it's just a sort of a drawback of having such a strong identity. So I don't believe Nuno's going to overhaul that and change it anytime soon. So we've got to find ways of dealing with the fact that they are now dealing with us.
Well, we're just a front-running team, aren't we? So aren't we we're a front-running team. If we score first, we typically win. But if the other team manages to jag a goal on us, which happens, maybe 6 out of 25 games, then the other guys tend to get us, and that's our identity. And we're not quite sure how to deal with that yet. And you could go and try and find an alternative identity that might be a second or first place. But we've certainly hit the ceiling for the structure and style of play that we go at. And we've just got to accept that sometimes it's a little bit tough for us to come back, especially away from home. They look lost, and I thought we were very lucky to get that Chris Wood goal. That was not a great pass. He managed to just pull that off for himself, didn't he, Max?
Yeah, well, I was just, it's almost like you read my mind, Dave. I was just about to talk about that. It was brilliant. I thought that, it kind of was maybe against the run of play. I think we were lucky to equalise when we did.
Yeah, we were.
And you're right, Chris Wood, moment of brilliance. Yes, it takes a little bit of deflection, but the way he kind of turns, moves his body, just again, people are very quick to criticise, and I mean this in the nicest way, but people are quick to criticise Chris Wood just for scoring well. Oh, well, Chris Wood's just there, isn't he, at the right, and I've said it before, right place, right time, and he's there for a tap-in, but there are times when he just has that real striker instinct and brilliance, and he certainly had that on Saturday with the goal. I mean, 18 for him now so far this season. Just unbelievable of how crucial he is. And Dave, I was just chatting to a mate the other day, and he was like, oh yeah, but it's Chris Wood and he's always in the right place at the right time and he isn't that technically of a brilliant of a striker. And I'm thinking, well, you look at somebody from the past like Alan Shearer, who made a career really out of being there at that right place at the right time. But as well as that, and as well as those little tap-ins, Chris Wood has those moments like he had on Saturday, and it just proves 18 goals now for Forest. If we're looking at the positives at the minute, rather than a defeat to Fulham, quite minor, where we are, look at the bigger picture, it is quite unbelievable that Forest have a striker that we've craved for ages about just constantly scoring.
Arsenal would kill for him, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
I watch, we watch these like juvenile, adolescent Arsenal fans and Tottenham fans. Oh, we need a striker, this, that, and the other. And I bet if you offer them Chris Wood, oh no, he's not glamorous enough. No, he's not exotic enough.
That's a good point.
Goal scorers are there to provide numbers of goals. 18 is fantastic. I think the lad's one of the great football professionals of the world at the moment. Works hard, keeps himself fit, unbelievably humble, unbelievably unselfish, generous to the rest of the squad. His leadership's magnificent. The goal on Saturday, I mean, I thought on Saturday, and I said this, I was stood next to the door in the Putney end of Craven Cottage, which I'd recommend anybody go to. It's a fantastic little ground, Craven Cottage. And I thought the first 10 or 15 minutes, we were the better side. Nico had a shot just past the post, and until Emil scored for them, I thought we were the better side. It's easy to just say, Forest are terrible, this, that, and the other, and what. But at the time the goal came, it was a sort of a dink ball by Morg. He's got in the box. There's a bit of a tangle of bodies, but for a big guy, to adjust in the way he did and to go, he's kind of heading right and then he comes back to head left and okay, he got a touch to put it in. I thought it was one of the finest goals I've seen for ages. The awareness, the immediacy and instinct of his thinking to put it in the back of the net was fantastic. And he is magnificent as a human being and as a footballer, right? Yeah, he's not your... they're all obsessed with glamour players these days. But if you said to Arsenal go on about Havertz all the time, you know, and they look at Wood and they go, God, we'd love to have Chris Wood doing what he's doing. I think he's magnificent. And that goal summed up what he's been doing now for probably since Nuno came in. You know, just over a year now. Like the last 14 months of Chris Wood have been fantastic, really. So yeah, I can't sing his praises high enough.
Yeah, no, I agree, Dave. I think Chris Wood is if you're having to like almost present a case study in football tactics of how you change a player from the way they've been playing under, and obviously no disrespect at all to Steve Cooper, but the way he was kind of playing under Steve Cooper, and of course previous managers in his career, because this has been one of the best seasons ever for him, probably the best season ever as a professional footballer. So if you're almost presenting a Chris Wood case study and you're writing a nice long kind of essay about it, you'd be talking about how much he's changed under Nuno and talk about playing to his strengths and playing him obviously on that kind of high defensive line, and you know, that comes with the risk of him maybe getting a couple of offsides more than usual, but who cares? He scored 18 goals for Forest, so long may it continue. Aussie Dave, I wanted to talk about set pieces and particularly headers. Forest conceded 2 in this game to Fulham. An interesting stat: in the first 20 games of the season, Forest conceded only 2 goals from headers. In the last 5 games, Forest have conceded 5 goals from headers. So you'd average a header a game conceded. Is it a concern that Forest, I don't like to say it, but might be going back to their old ways in terms of set pieces? Or, you know, am I looking too much into that stat? Is it something we've got to work on again aerially? You'd think maybe the back three of Milenkovic, Murillo and Morata would maybe do a bit of a better job.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because my team on the weekend didn't defend a corner the way that I wanted them to, and I had to fill in as goalie because our keeper got injured. And I was shouting at my guys, screaming, defend more like Nottingham Forest do. And then I sent out a video showing how Forest previously used to defend on corner.
This is in-depth stuff.
Which has now made a complete liar of me. Look, the Fulham game's a bit of an anomaly because they just whipped in so many crosses. So, you know, like typically if you get 9 corners, you score off 1. So if you've got 20 crosses in a game, then it doesn't matter how good Milenkovic is. Eventually one's going to drop in that just drops in the perfect spot. And we've had a couple of them happen more recently, and that can just happen sporadically. It's Nikola Milenkovic. Are you seriously telling me you're worried about the way that he is going to organise a defensive line for set pieces? And if there is a problem, goodness me, in terms of a player, other than Des Walker in my lifetime, I'm pretty confident in his ability to fix that up. I think just get on the training ground, just remind everyone what the process is, and just get back to it. I'm not worried about the set pieces. Nah, not worried.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
fair enough.
Are you asking it as a probing question, or are you genuinely worried?
No, I'm asking it as a bit of a probing question because I saw the stat on social media yesterday and I thought that would make a bit of an interesting talking point, if I'm being totally honest. I think Morata struggles in the air more than the other two. Dave, do you want to come in there?
All I would say is I've seen Smith Rowe's goal back from Saturday from a different angle, and the cross is just brilliant.
Yeah.
You've got Milenkovic and Murillo taken out by the ball. The big man Morata jumped as high as he possibly could, and it just went over his head. And all Emil had to do was put his head on it and put it in the back of the net. And that, you could say, do we want to be negative and say it was all Morato's fault, nothing to do with Traore? No. I thought the corner could have been defended better, but actually, having praised Chris Wood, and I'm going to do it, it was Woody who kind of lost Calvin Bassey at the corner. So when Calvin Bassey headed it, he was in a 10-acre field on his own and nodded it back. So you could, but they stand together, they fall together. So it wasn't a Chris Wood thing, it was a Forest thing. Forest is a collective unit because they're a family, and that's the way they've played, and that's the way they're going to continue to play under Nuno, I've no doubt. As a family, they allowed Calvin Bassey to find a pocket of space and head it back over Selzy. And his header was brilliant. It had to be brilliant because by a country mile, Matt Sells was our best player on Saturday. You know what I mean? So I'm with Dave. I'm with Dave. I'm not. If you started to worry about Nikola Milenkovic, Murillo, and Morato, no worries.
Maybe the world's ending. Yeah. Maybe the world's ended if we start to worry about
Milenkovic in the back line, Max, and I'd be confident of heading the crosses over. That's how good Milenkovic is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on, give yourself some credit, Dave. I'm sure you do. You're quite funny. I mean, Dave, you still play six-a-side, don't you?
Yeah.
So there you go. You two seem to play more football than me at the minute. I hardly ever play. I'm just
play charity matches, Max.
Yeah, I just play charity matches and give away penalties and things. I'm just crap at football. Let's be brutally honest. I'm better at talking. Well, I should be better at talking about it. Maybe that's not true. I'll let the viewers and listeners decide about that. Right. I just wanted to bring up this one last point before we look ahead to Newcastle and get on with our Monday and not talk about this too much. Jim makes a good point here in the comments about I don't think Dominguez is too happy about warming the bench. And obviously he means that in a way of him not getting regular match football. And I looked at his facial expressions and looked at his body language of the day and thought the exact same thing. And I just wanted to pose the question, Dave, about whether almost Nuno has such a difficult job on his hands to keep everybody happy, because naturally footballers are going to want match football. You'll know it from coaching teams. It is hard to keep everybody happy.
It is. And like I say, we go back to this idea that there are four of them, all with their pros and cons, battling for one position. Now, I mean, we walked out for Craven Cottage and there was some, sort of somebody coming out. We said, that game kind of was, you felt like in some ways that game was crying out for a bit of Yatesy, and he's being all over the place kind of physicality. I personally think Ibra in terms of the fee and what he's done at Eindhoven, Ibra should be the guy doing that. But for whatever reason, medical or, settling into this country hasn't quite got to the pace of it yet. If we get the Ibra that you saw at PSV Eindhoven, then, as a physical unit, then that's going to do wonders. Danilo, to me, is a little bit more attacking minded. I've always felt that Dominguez is the one that's given us the best number 6 role, if you like. I've always kind of felt when he's been on song, he's fetched and carried and knitted the team together, and he's a willing worker who kind of goes under the radar. And I think he's the mortar that holds the bricks of it together a lot of the time. So he would be my guy to be starting in the 6 role at the moment. If I was Nuno, and I'm not as intelligent as Nuno or as knowledgeable about football as Nuno is, but if it was me, Dominguez would be my man to start with, then allowing Elliott and Morgan to go and play in those further forward roles. But he's looking at they're all 4 of them are kind of, Danilo's coming back, Ibra's coming back, Yatesy's done some good things, Nico's done some good things. It's the one big dilemma I think Nuno's got. Yeah.
Do you want to come in there, Aussie Dave?
Yeah, I was just going to say on Pat's comment about Dominguez not being happy. If you compare Dominguez to Jota Silva or Willy Bolly, who are also both not making the team very often, the difference is that Jota Silva is behind Anthony Langer and Callum Hudson-Odoi, who are on absolute fire. So they're not going. He can't really be grumpy for being behind those two. And the same thing for Willy Bolly and to a degree Morata. And so, Morata's not unseating Milenkovic or Murillo. Whereas Dominguez is sitting there looking at some of these performances and going, "Hey, wait a minute. When I play in this position, I think I'm better than these guys." Having said that, we all have short memories. Some of those pedestrian passes from Dominguez and the short ones that he gives the ball away so easily, he's not guilt-free of making mistakes either in some of those situations. I think he's a more useful squad player, Dominguez, because he can fill in further forward and in the wing positions and some of the other midfielders. But it's Sangare for me is the one that I'd be picking. And so we've got a vote for Dominguez from Dave Astbury. Sangare for me, Max. What's your vote?
I'd be tempted to go with Dominguez. I'd be tempted to go more Dominguez than Sangare. I agree. I think Dominguez hardly ever puts a foot wrong for Forest. I think he's one of those that goes a little bit of an unsung hero. You mentioned it a bit there, Dave.
Bad pass the other day.
I'm agreeing with my Uncle Dave. Right, let's quickly look ahead to Newcastle. Aussie Dave, I will let you have the last word about that game, mate. That is a huge game next week, and probably important if Forest want to be staying in this top four. Of course, every game is, but maybe next week's a little bit more important. And Newcastle are a very, very good side. It's going to be difficult.
Very, very good side. So they're sitting 6 points behind us with an inferior goal difference, oddly enough. I had us needing 68 points to qualify for the Champions League was my estimate. So currently we're on 47. I think we might actually drop the next three matches to Newcastle, Arsenal and City, and we will still make the Champions League. So after that, we have a run of fixtures that are far easier than those. But boy, if we could pick up a win against Newcastle, that would really just, that might be the match that we look at and go, yeah, we had a tough run of matches there with maybe losing to Bournemouth, Fulham, Arsenal and Man City, just jagging to Newcastle. It might also put them to bed for chasing us. You'd have to think, what are they, 6 points behind us? If we could beat them, 9 points with 12 to go, I think that might be all she wrote for them catching us. So then it's, Chelsea, Bournemouth, Man City trying to get us for the end. So they got some good players. Matt Anthony Gordon, he's an absolute gun. Goodness me, I don't like the prospect of playing against him.
No, he's a good player. Yeah,
he's back.
I think this one on what I'd rather be playing Newcastle. I was kind of hoping that Newcastle would beat City. I'd rather play Newcastle with them having beaten City than them having lost 4-0. Look what Brighton have done since they lost 7-0 to us. They've won both games against Chelsea. And there's nothing, I always say, and it's a bit of a cliche of mine, there's nothing like a bad defeat to focus a team. And I don't think we'll catch them on the hop this time like we did on Boxing Day last year. I tell you what I think. Looking at these next three games, I think we're going to struggle against Newcastle. I think we're going to struggle against City, but I think we'll beat Arsenal. I do. I'm really confident about beating Arsenal because where Arsenal's goal's going to come from, unless Marino comes on late on every time. So I think.
Would you take 3 points if I offer them to you now, Dave?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
3 out of 9.
That's three draws as well, isn't it? The equivalent of 3 draws. So I would take.
I'd take it.
I'm really Sunday. I think it's going to be tough because they'll be. Eddie will say, "Hey, we don't lose 4-0 again," so they're going to make them tough. And I think Isak is world class personally, and Gordon is a good lad. But City, I don't know, but I really fancy us to beat Arsenal. I just think Arsenal will stroll in thinking that they only have to turn up and that might suit Forest. You know what I mean? So I would take any points from these next 3, whether it's, 2, 3 or 4, whatever. I think it'd be great. And Dave's point about the fixtures then, Portman Road, then a break, and then we're, United, Villa, Tottenham, whatever else. If we can get into those games without too much damage from these next 3, I think we'll be in a decent position to finish in that top 5, 6, 7, whatever.
7 wins. What we need. 7.
Yeah. No, it's
from 13.
Yeah.
We've only lost 6 in 25, so it's possible, isn't it?
It's very possible.
And if it's a tighter comp, then the 68 estimate might even be a safer points estimate. And if the 5th team makes it, it might also be safe. We've seen us survive with the lowest ever score for surviving before. So maybe Forest can be the lowest ever Champions League qualifying team. Wouldn't that just be great? You know what? If you offered that to me now, I'd take it. That would be great. That would be just to troll the rest of the Premier League.
And we'll win the FA Cup by doing it on penalties every single game and dragging it out to the 198th minute.
The FA Cup worries me, Max. Crystal Palace during the Leicester City title winning year. They were sitting 3rd at Christmas, went on that FA Cup run, made to the final, finished nowhere.
I don't know. I think that it's a more open competition than it ever has been, and I think Forest have to take the next round incredibly seriously. I would be playing a full strength side. It's not going to be easy.
We're at that point. I think certainly the quarter-final stage, people start to play their best 11s. They treat it like another league game. If we can get through this Ipswich game, and I'm fairly confident we'll beat Ipswich. They're a good bunch, Ipswich, really well coached, but I think we can beat them. I think we'll beat them because we've made such a struggle of it at Exeter. We thumped Exeter. It's almost like, that's gone there and the opposite happens next time. But the bottom line with all this is, isn't it great not to be talking about bloody relegation, not being 17th, points deduction? Will we keep Murillo? Will we keep Morgan?
Imagine that, we're sitting there. Imagine we were sitting on 20 points. Well, guys, we're just ahead of Wolves. We're like 20 points. Every other team, they've lost 4 of the last 5, just like us. Yeah, that just seems a long time away. Dave Astbury, I look forward to sitting with you at the FA Cup final and spending 20 grand to get there. That is what I hope happens in my future.
We're not paying it. 20 grand. It'll probably cost you that much.
Yeah, that's how much it's going to cost me to fly.
Dave's got that in cash in the loft. Dave's got 20 grand upstairs. I'm sure he'll help you out.
I've got actually.
Stand back in the sofa here, mate.
I've got Forest for a double, the Premier League and the FA Cup to win an absolute mozza, which is obviously probably not going to happen, but you can dream.
Yes, you can dream. My dad's had a bet on Forest to win the league for the past 3, 4, 5 seasons in the Championship or in the Premier League. So you never know. One day it might come in. Otherwise, it's just a bit delusional every season.
Max, what formation would you run with against Newcastle?
I don't know. I almost feel like we should. If I was Nuno, I'd want to stick with 5 at the back to almost prove a point. And I mean that in a sense of it's going to be a difficult game. Why not go a little bit tighter? I think you've got to change the midfield, but in terms and hopefully bring. It's difficult, isn't it? Because then you can't bring. I don't know. I think Callum Hudson-Odoi and Anthony Elanga needs to start. So Dave, I think actually the more I kind of think about it and say it out loud, 4 at the back.
I think we'll go back to the other one this time because I think to Dave's point about Anthony Gordon and whatever else, I think he'll want Callum and Anthony either side of Chris to force Newcastle back to give them something to think about. So I think that'll come in. I actually felt we did when Callum came on Saturday. Forest did get into the game a bit more, and we had a lot more of the game in and around Fulham's box and sort of forced Anderson and Bassi and their Castagna and whoever else, Anthony Robinson back more with Callum. So I think that's where he go. But like you say, Max, Nuno being a bit contrary, he'll say, I'll just stick with what I did. You know what I mean? He won't.
It's the 4. It's an unbackable. It's the 4-2-3-1. That's the team he's rolling out. And I reckon Yates might come back in actually.
Get in. Yeah. Good.
I reckon he might bring Yates in he might think of calming stability. Because the thing is, one thing I'll credit to my man Yates, and I've never been a detractor of yours, Ryan, is that you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting. So maybe it takes a little bit of volatility out of that position, and maybe that's not such a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Guimaraes, Joe Linton, and Tonali, they're going to need some disturbing in next area. A really good trio. Good trio.
Absolutely. Right, that does us very nicely. Thank you both as ever. Looking forward rather than looking back. That's the way I think. I just keep looking at it. Yeah, exactly. I just keep looking at the bigger picture.
It's incredible. We're third. Sink that in. We're third. Who ever thought we'd be third back in August? None of us. Enjoy it. It's incredible. Our lads have been fantastic. I love them. That's why people. Our away support is incredible. People travel because they love this bunch of lads. Whatever happens, our lads are guaranteed a successful season. It's just the degree of it. It's fantastic. I love them.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. Very nicely said to finish us off. We will be back towards the end of this week for a preview with Newcastle. Safe journey up at St James's. Looking forward to it. First visit for me, actually. Didn't go to the season we went up because my family decided to book a holiday and it clashed with Forest first because it was like, because they moved it because of the World Cup because of Qatar. And I was like, I can remember I went on 5 Live to talk about it and Colin Murray stitched me up and knew because I said, I'm not going on Saturday. And I said, whatever you do, Colin, I said, don't say this live on air. And Colin Murray goes, call yourself a Forest fan, Max. You're not going to the first game in the Premier League for the first time in 23 years. So I missed it then, and I missed Boxing Day as well last year. I missed Chris Wood on fire with his pigs and blankets. So fingers crossed that he'll be eating more pigs and blankets on Sunday, and we'll have all a good trip up there. Dave, Aussie Dave, appreciate staying up, mate. I know it's late, so get some sleep. Dave, enjoy the rest of your Monday, mate. What are you up to? Are you have to go and put more cash down the back of the sofa?
I'm basically I'm going to have to retrieve my funds from the sofa. And if anybody's thinking of robbing me, actually, maybe they're not there. I'm going straight to the gym in a minute because it's workout time. 2 hours of death. 2 hours.
You've been training, Dave. You can't tell.
Gee, unbelievable.
You know what? I don't think I look too bad for a guy who's 84, really. You know what I mean?
You're not looking too bad. You know what? I know what you're doing after this, Max Hayes. You're calling your mother just to see how she's doing. Hello.
Oh, that's that. Yeah. Do you know what? In fact, actually, Dave, I actually rang her last night and said, my dad liked it because we gave him a shout on the last podcast. So with his hip, so. Yeah, so maybe I'll have to give my mum a shout in the next few weeks. No, I'm actually going to go to the gym too. Me and Dave think alike. Similar minds, young minds, whereas you're off to sleep, eh? Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. We'll see you soon. God, this podcast takes many turns, doesn't it? We'll see you all very soon. See you Friday for that preview for Newcastle. Thanks for the comments as well, watching live on Facebook, Nottingham Forest News and YouTube. Garibaldi Red. As Forest still sit third in the Premier League, we shall see you very soon. Come on, you Reds.